I'm going to create an enemy now. So I'm going to create a couple of sprites in the game layer. And game layer is locked. Let's unlock that and lock the HUD. So it's a simple two frame animation with this. So import frames from sprite strip. Let's just delete that frame. Let's preview that. So we need to loop. Yep. And we just want sort of the flashing of the engines. Let's preview that. Oh, I've just set the origin point wrong. Quick sign middle. Preview that. Yeah, so the kind of engines are kind of flashing. And we need to do the same thing with the origin point, so the orientation of the sprite. And so we need to rotate it, no, that way around, that's it. And do the same for this, this one. So it's facing the right direction. There we go. Let's set the angle of that to 70. No, sorry, the angle of that is going to be 90. Okay, I'm going to call that bug 1 enemy. I'm also going to create another sprite. This isn't an animation, it's just this. This is going to be the graphic for the spawner, because the way it's going to work is that the spawner is going to be on the layout. When the player reaches a certain position, that will then create the enemy from that spawn point, and the spawn point will destroy itself. That way you can sort of position things on the layout and not have like loads of enemies with kind of function calls, things they're doing with the code, they're not active. Okay, so using this system of having a spawn point and then the enemy is created from that is a more efficient way of populating the layout with your enemies. And I'm going to name that bug 1 spawn. Okay, so with the bug spawn, it doesn't need a collision map, to disable that, and it's going to be invisible ultimately in the game. I'm going to still make it visible for just to show you how it's working. And again, we need to change the orientation of that way around. The angle is 90. So this is the thing that's going to be on our layout, and then when the player reaches a certain point, the real enemy will pop out of it and do stuff. I've positioned the spawn point up here, so there's a little bit of lead in before it appears, and I've just positioned my enemy to the side for the kind of reference object. Later on we're going to set it to destroy outside the layout, so it'll destroy it, so I might as well do that now. Behaviors, add destroy outside the layout. Okay, so if it goes out of the layout, it will kill it. So we can get the spawner to spawn when it's within a certain pixel range of the scroll object as it's travelling up the screen. So we're going to add a sub event, and it's a bug spawn, and we need to compare its Y position. And although the number decreases as we're moving up the screen in terms of the Y coordinate, we have to set it to greater or equal to scroll.y, and then minus the width of the screen, half the width of the screen. I'm just going to set that to 200 at the moment so you can see how it's working. So as the Y scroll object moves up the screen, it'll encounter the bug spawn, has a Y position, and as that distance decreases, the bug spawn Y coordinate will become greater than that value there. And in that instance, the system needs to create an object which is the bug enemy on the layer 3, which is our game layer, at the position of the bug spawn object. Dot x, let's copy and paste that. Let's say for y, done. So what I've just done is added a few of these bugs, so we'll test that out. So the kind of positions around about here, 200 pixels from the center, so you'll see that they'll activate. Now you notice that only one has activated, and this is because at that frame it's creating that spawn point, but it's not doing it for all the others, so we need to tell it to do that. And you do that by adding another condition, which is the bug spawn. Which is a system condition, and for each bug spawner. So every time that condition is met, it'll do it for all of them. And we also want to destroy the bug spawner as well. So let's check that out again. So when it comes within 200 pixels, you can see, yeah, now it's doing it for all of them. So go back in here, and I'm going to set that figure to be so the length, half length 306. I'm going to add 32 pixel stacks. I want it to spawn slightly off the screen. 338. So now instead of they'll spawn at the correct point, slightly off the screen. So now we need to make the enemy do something once it has spawned, and I'm going to create a bullet behavior for the motion, and once it's spawned, we're going to set the bug enemy set speed and have it quite fast, 450. But what I'm going to do is set the acceleration to minus 450, so it'll shoot forwards and slow down quite quickly. So let's just have a quick look at that, what that does. Yeah. Okay. So what I want to do then, when it's slowed down sufficiently, we are going to compare the speed, and it's going to be less than 20. And then what we're going to tell it to do is set the angle of motion towards the player. So it's going to come forwards, slow down, and then sort of kamikaze style rush at the enemy, rush at the player. And what we're going to do is use a little expression in here to set the angle. So there's an expression called angle, and the way it works here, as you can see, you have the x and y of the first object and the x and y of the second object, and it will create a position from the first point, which will generate between those points, which will create the angle that we want to set the bullet to. So if we set it to player.x and then player.y, and then bug enemy dot x and bug enemy dot y. And then it'll turn towards the player, and then we will set the acceleration to 450, so then it will speed up towards the player. Let's check that out. Now you can see, I knew this would happen, that it's going in the opposite direction, but that's easily fixed because we just go to here and just add on the end of that expression minus 180 degrees, which will basically flip it. Let's test that again. Let's move about, slow down, and then they turn towards the player. I'm just going to add onto this keyboard on key pressed. No, not this one. Let's try again. On a key pressed, and select escape. Done. And then system, restart layout. So I'm just setting this up so we can test things out a lot better rather than keep loading things. So we can check out what it's doing. So just press escape and that restarts. Yeah, so obviously we'll have time to shoot those. I think I might change the bullet speed to a little bit, so it, no, keep that minus 20. But I'm going to increase the acceleration to 500. Done, and set the deceleration to 500 to slow it down a bit faster. Obviously you can tweak this once you get everything up and running. I mean, that's part of the kind of play testing really. Yeah, that looks better. It's a bit more manic. We want to destroy the bug enemy once it leaves the screen. However, if we use what we did for the player fire the bullets, as in invert the screen condition, we're going to have a problem because it's going to generate off screen. So what we need to do is create another instance variable in this, our first instance variable, and we're going to create a Boolean statement, which is basically, it's like, think of it like a switch. It's either true or false, and it's going to be called has spawned, which is set to false. So once it's spawned, bug enemy set boolean has spawned is true, because it has spawned. And then what we want to add is an enemy event is on screen, and we invert that, and we add another condition, which is to check that Boolean instance has spawned is true. Then we can destroy the enemy, so it doesn't take up any more memory. I mean, eventually it'll come out of the layout and will be destroyed anyway, but this is just to make sure that if it does sort of go in a straight line or something like that, and it takes a while to get off the layout, that it'll not impede the game performance. We can test that out in the debug layout. So we can run the layout there, but we can also do the debug here. It runs a bit slow on my machine, this, so you have to bear with me. But here you can see we've got no enemies spawned. That's the instances of the enemy. If you just hang on a second, there they are. So we got 2, 3, and as they come off the screen, yeah, they disappear. So that's working.